So, and the last discussion we had, we're talking about Tawhid, and obviously you might go away thinking that, well, Islam must be a monotheistic religion. It doesn't have any form of polytheism in it. It's no pagan practices, surely. But what I'm going to talk about is the origin of Ramadan. Now, Ramadan, for many Muslims, could not be more monotheistic. But the surprising thing is that it is actually a pagan feast. It's a pagan festival. I'm going to just read out some notes that I've taken on this. In the 1950s, archaeologists found stelae face down under a mosque in Haran. They were made at the time of the last king of Babylon.
When you say Haran, this up in Anatolia?
Yes, yeah.
This is the place where Abraham. Is it? Yes, Abraham stopped, and Abraham's father died. Is that
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
So what they found were these stelae, which are rocks with inscriptions, and the inscriptions were done by or on behalf of King Nabonidus. Now, he lived in the 6th century BC, 556 to 539 BC, and in it he proclaimed that he was promoting the god Sin. Now, the god Sin was part of a triad of gods which were worshipped in Iraq. These were clearly pagan gods, but he basically gave up his kingship. He basically passed his reign to his son. Now, his son is probably familiar to you. His name is Baltashir. No, it's
not Balthazar.
Belshazzar.
Well, one of the Magi, or the same name as one of the Magi.
He's the guy that appears in the book of Daniel with
the
writing on the wall.
I've got him now.
Okay.
Yes.
So, so in the book of Daniel, chapter 5, verse 1 onwards, basically, God is not happy with this feast that's going on. It doesn't mention the name of the feast. Mm-hmm. All it says the background to it was that they were using utensils from the temple, using the cups that would have been used for wine at this feast. And so the feast that was happening in Haran was actually this 30 days of fasting, and it was in relation to the moon god's sin. And so in March each year, the moon would go into the star cluster Pleiades, and would basically be gone for about 30 days, or at least in the midst of this star cluster. And then they would wait at the gate of Haran for the moon to re-emerge. And so on the last day when the moon re-emerged, they had a feast. And the feast was called Al-Fitr, which is pretty much Al-Fitr in Arabic. So that's where it comes from. And it's fascinating that we have proof that this king Nabonidus was promoting this and promoting it into northern Arabia back in, as I say, the 6th century BC. And he was basically saying that this god was the greater of the three gods. And it's interesting that even in Islam we talk about Allah being the greater, you know, Allahu Akbar. But so Ramadan is essentially a pagan festival. It had been going for 14 centuries prior to Islam. And you may ask, how does...
Can I just... what I found, it's all interesting, what I really zoned in on there was the Al-Fitr business. Because that's the name of the feast at the conclusion of Ramadan, isn't it? That's the last day, or when Ramadan comes to an end, the month of fasting comes to an end, the new moon, it's Eid al-Fitr. And you're saying that this term was already in use, but in relation to a completely pagan god.
Absolutely. It was used, as I say, from the 6th century BC all the way through. It started to die out, and it probably, this pagan belief probably would have died out with the advent of Christianity, apart from the fact that there was a caliph called Marwan II, 744 to 750. He decided to build his palace on the site of the location of this Temple of Sen in Haran.
That's an unfortunate name.
Yeah. So I believe that is probably where the resurrection of this feast came about. Perhaps he was fascinated with the local history of that feast, decided to incorporate it into this growing religion called Islam, which wasn't fully formulated at this stage. Remember, the Sirah hadn't yet been written, and you know, Al-Tabari was a long way yet to come. So I think this is where it slipped in. Had they not brought that in, I think probably Islam would look very different to what it is today.
Yeah.
But it has this unfortunate mix now of Judaism, Christianity, an Iraqi pagan religion from the 6th century that the Bible condemns, and basically Nabonidus and his son Balthasar get their kingship taken away from them. And who takes over but the Persians? So the Persians are given this reign of power as punishment for them sacrilegiously using the utensils from the temple in Jerusalem. So it's a fascinating bit of history.
Yeah, you and I are both fascinated by Islam and the origins of Islam. And almost all of my attention is taken up by the Christian and Jewish roots of the Quran and the historical background, and very little about the pagan aspects. But it's fascinating. We know so little about it. Of all the theories that we now have about the role of Judaism and the Abrahamic background, things like the Black Stone, for example, are almost completely mysterious. No one's really got a good, strong explanation as to where the Black Stone comes from. It seems to be something completely pagan that's just parachuted into this Abrahamic religion. And this looks like another example in the same vein. This really mysterious pagan practice that has just come from nowhere.
Yeah, and it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier in terms of the sources from the Quran. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason in terms of the sources that are used. So we saw that they used a romance as a source for the Shahada. They use apocalyptic writings. They use Gnostic texts They use the Bible. There's nothing excluded from what they will use. And so it's the same it goes with the practices.
The fact that the righteous will wear, or the companions of the right will wear green silk in paradise, comes from Mithraism, doesn't it? The idea that people wear green in paradise, whereas of course in the Bible we wear white in paradise.
Yeah, so there's definitely...
There's a real kind of magpie Muhammad sort of idea here that is just taking so many influences and trying to untangle them and see how they came together. Is just fascinating.
I would say that it's not just one person, it's a collection of people. It just didn't end in the 7th century, carried on 8th, 9th, 10th century onwards. Magpie stuff going on all the time, and it's probably still going on. 20 years ago, if you were to go to Mecca, you would see one stone pillar that they were throwing pebbles against, and then it became 3, and then instead of a pillar, it became a massive, large wall, and no one raised any eyebrows, and they carry on as before. So, this will carry on. There are no boundaries in terms of the syncretism that will go on in Islam.